Get out of the family photo. The ultimate revenge story. My mother told me to get out of the family photo. Years later, she saw my face plastered across every storefront in town. They said I would never be like her. The flash of the camera should have captured a moment of family happiness, but instead, it immortalized the exact second my world shattered into a million irreparable pieces. It was Thanksgiving Day, November 2018, at my family's sprawling colonial house in Westchester County, New York. The autumn leaves had painted the yard in brilliant oranges and golds, and the smell of roasted turkey and cinnamon filled the air, creating what should have been the perfect backdrop for family memories. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and I was 22 years old when my mother, Linda Mitchell, spoke the words that would haunt me for years, but ultimately become the fuel for my extraordinary transformation. Standing there in our formal living room, with its cream-colored walls adorned with oil paintings and antique furniture that had been in our family for generations, I felt smaller than I ever had in my entire life. The Mitchell family had always been picture-perfect on the outside. My father, Robert Mitchell, was a successful investment banker on Wall Street, driving his black BMW to Manhattan every morning at exactly 6:47 a.m. Our house, a stunning four-bedroom, colonial with white shutters and a wraparound porch, sat on 2 acres of meticulously maintained lawn. From the outside, we looked like the American dream incarnate. But inside those pristine walls, a different reality existed. My younger sister Emma, 19 at the time, had always been the golden child. With her flowing blonde hair that caught light like spun silk, piercing blue eyes that seemed to sparkle with natural charisma, and a smile that could melt the hardest hearts. She was everything our parents had ever wanted in a daughter. Emma was studying communications at Columbia University, already interning at a prestigious PR firm, and dating the son of a prominent senator. I, on the other hand, was the family's dark secret. Where Emma was tall and willowy, I was short and curvy. Where she had golden hair, mine was a mousy brown that refused to hold any style. Where she was studying at an Ivy League school, I was working at Target while taking night classes at the local community college, struggling to afford even the most basic education. The differences between Emma and me weren't just physical or academic. They were systematic, deliberate, and soul-crushing. Throughout our childhood, Emma received professional dance lessons, piano instruction, tennis coaching, and summer camps in Europe. I received hand-me-down clothes and the occasional harsh criticism about my weight, my grades, or my lack of motivation. When Emma graduated high school, our parents threw her a party that cost more than most people's cars, complete with a live band, professional catering, and guests that included local politicians and business leaders. When I graduated 2 years later, we went to Olive Garden, just the 4 of us, and Emma spent the entire dinner talking about her college preparations. But that Thanksgiving Day in 2018 was when the mask finally slipped completely. The extended Mitchell clan had gathered for our annual feast. My paternal grandmother, Eleanor, a stern woman in her 80s who had never shown me an ounce of warmth. My Uncle Charles and Aunt Margaret with their twin boys, and my mother's sister Diane with her husband and their perfect daughter, Sophia, who was Emma's age and equally accomplished. The house buzzed with conversation about achievements and successes. Emma regaled everyone with stories about her internship at Morrison & Associates, the high-profile PR firm where she was already being considered for a full-time position after graduation. Sophia talked about her acceptance to medical school at Johns Hopkins. The twin boys, both 16, had just been accepted to a prestigious boarding school in Connecticut. And then there was me, sitting quietly at the edge of conversations, wearing a dress I'd bought on clearance from my own workplace, trying to make myself invisible while secretly wondering why I even bothered to show up to these family gatherings anymore. "Sarah's working at Target," my mother announced when Aunt Diane asked about my recent activities. The way she said it, with that particular tone that made it sound like I was working in a sewage treatment plant, made my cheeks burn with embarrassment. "She's also taking some classes at the community college." "Oh," Aunt Diane replied, the single syllable dripping with pity and barely concealed judgment. "That's nice." The conversation quickly moved on to more impressive topics. Emma's latest accomplishment, Sophia's MCAT scores, Uncle Charles's promotion to partner at his law firm. I excused myself and went to the kitchen, where I found my grandmother Eleanor, rinsing dishes with the mechanical precision of someone who had performed this task thousands of times. "Grandmother," I said, attempting to make conversation, "can I help you with anything?" She turned to look at me with those cold gray eyes that had never shown me any warmth. "Sarah, dear, why don't you focus on helping yourself first? Get your life together before you worry about helping others." The words hit me like a physical blow. Even my own grandmother, the woman who was supposed to love me unconditionally simply because I existed, couldn't be bothered to be kind to me. I retreated to the bathroom, locked the door, and stared at my reflection in the ornate mirror above the marble sink. My brown hair hung limp around my face, my makeup had smudged slightly, and my brown eyes looked tired and defeated. I wondered, not for the first time, what cosmic joke had placed me in this family of beautiful, successful people who seemed to view my very existence as an inconvenience. When I returned to the living room, my mother was organizing the family photo. This was a Mitchell family tradition that went back decades. Every Thanksgiving, we would take a formal family portrait that would be framed and displayed in the hallway alongside years of previous photos. The wall was like a timeline of Mitchell family success, with everyone looking progressively more accomplished and put together year after year. "All right, everyone gather around," my mother called out, her voice taking on that cheerful hostess tone she used when she wanted everything to appear perfect. "Let's get this year's photo taken before the light fades." The photographer, a family friend named Marcus who had been taking our portraits for over a decade, began arranging people with the practiced eye of someone who understood the Mitchell family dynamics. He positioned my father in the center, distinguished and commanding in his navy blazer. My mother stood beside him, radiant in a cream cashmere sweater that probably cost more than my monthly salary. Emma was placed prominently to my father's right, her beauty and poise making her a natural focal point. I started to move toward the group, assuming I would find my usual spot in the back row, partially hidden behind someone else as I had been in years past. But as I approached, my mother held up her hand like a traffic cop stopping an oncoming car. "Sarah," she said, her voice carrying clearly across the silent room, "could you step out of the photo, please?" The words hung in the air like toxic smoke. Everyone in the room froze. The only sound was the gentle ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner and the distant hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. I felt every pair of eyes in the room turn toward me, some with shock, others with barely concealed agreement. "I'm sorry, what?" I managed to ask, though I had heard her perfectly clearly. My voice sounded small and foreign, like it was coming from someone else entirely. "The photo," my mother repeated, her tone matter-of-fact, as if she was asking me to pass the salt. "Could you step out of it? We want this one to be special and, well, you know." The "you know" hung there like a sword suspended over my head. What exactly did I know? That I wasn't pretty enough? That I wasn't successful enough? That my very presence somehow diminished the family's perfect image? "Mom," Emma said quietly, her voice carrying a note of discomfort that surprised me. "Maybe we should—" "Emma, please," my mother cut her off sharply. "This is important. We want the photo to represent the family at our best." My father, who had remained silent during this exchange, finally spoke up, but his words offered no comfort. "Linda, maybe we could take 2 photos? One with everyone and one without—" "Robert, we've discussed this," my mother interrupted, using that tone that brooked no argument. "This photo will be displayed in our home for years to come. It needs to reflect who we really are as a family." The implication was crystal clear. I was not who they really were as a family. I looked around, the room at the faces of my relatives. My grandmother Eleanor wore an expression of mild approval, as if my mother had finally said something sensible. Uncle Charles and Aunt Margaret studied their hands with sudden, intense interest. Aunt Diane's mouth was slightly open in shock, but she made no move to defend me. Sophia and the twin boys looked deeply uncomfortable but said nothing. The only person who seemed genuinely upset was Emma, whose blue eyes had filled with tears. But even she didn't speak up again, didn't demand that I be included, didn't threaten to leave the photo herself if I wasn't allowed to be part of it. I stood there for what felt like an eternity but was probably only 30 seconds, feeling the weight of 22 years of subtle and not-so-subtle rejections crashing down on me all at once. Every birthday where Emma's parties were elaborate affairs while mine were afterthoughts. Every school event where my parents attended Emma's performances but missed mine due to scheduling conflicts. Every family dinner where my accomplishments were glossed over while Emma's were celebrated with champagne toasts. Fine, I said finally, my voice surprisingly steady. I'll go upstairs. Thank you, sweetheart, my mother said, actually using an endearment while simultaneously excluding me from the family. We'll call you when we're done. I turned and walked toward the staircase, my feet moving automatically while my brain struggled to process what had just happened. Behind me, I could hear my mother's voice returning to its cheerful hostess tone. All right, everyone, let's gather in closer. Marcus, can you adjust the lighting a bit? I climbed the stairs to my childhood bedroom, a small space that had never been redecorated since I was 12. The walls were still painted in a pale yellow that I had chosen when I thought sunshine. Colors would make me happy. My old twin bed sat against one wall, covered with a comforter that had faded over the years. A small desk occupied the corner, cluttered with textbooks from my community college classes and bills I was struggling to pay. I sat on the edge of the bed and listened to the sounds of family happiness drifting up from below. Laughter, conversation, the click of the camera capturing moment after moment of Mitchell family perfection. Through my bedroom window, I could see our neighbors' houses, each one warm and inviting with families that actually seemed to enjoy each other's company. That's when it hit me. Not the sadness I expected, but a white-hot rage that started in my stomach and spread through my entire body like wildfire. I was angry at my mother for her cruelty, angry at my father for his cowardice, angry at my extended family for their complicity, and angry at myself for allowing this treatment to continue for so many years. But more than angry, I was determined. Something crystallized in that moment, sitting alone in my childhood bedroom while my family celebrated without me downstairs. I made a decision that would change the trajectory of my entire life. I was going to become so successful, so undeniably accomplished, that they would regret every moment they had made me feel small. I wasn't sure how I was going to do it yet, but I knew with absolute certainty that I would. The girl who wasn't good enough for the family photo was going to become someone they couldn't ignore, couldn't diminish, couldn't exclude. I pulled out my phone and opened the voice memo app, then recorded a message to my future self. November 22nd, 2018. They don't think I belong in their perfect family photo. They think I'm not good enough to represent who they really are. I'm going to prove them wrong. I'm going to become so successful that my face will be everywhere they look, and they'll have to live with the knowledge that they tried to erase me from their history. This is not the end of my story. This is the beginning. When I played it back, my voice sounded different, stronger, more resolved. For the first time in my life, I felt like I had a real purpose, a mission that was entirely my own. Downstairs, I could hear the family photo session wrapping up, followed by the cheerful chatter of people who had successfully captured their perfect image without the inconvenient presence of the family disappointment. But I didn't feel disappointed anymore. I felt powerful. I was 22 years old, working at Target, struggling through community college, and had just been excluded from my own family portrait. By any reasonable measure, I was at the lowest point of my life. I had no idea that in just 3 years, my face would be plastered across every storefront, billboard, and magazine cover in our town. Impossible for my family to ignore or exclude. The transformation was about to begin, and it would be more spectacular than any of them could possibly imagine. The Monday morning after Thanksgiving felt different than every other Monday morning of my life. I woke up at 5:30 a.m. in my tiny studio apartment in Mount Vernon, a far cry from the opulent family home in Westchester County. The apartment was barely 400 square feet, with a kitchenette that consisted of a mini fridge, a hot plate, and a microwave I'd bought used from Craigslist. The shower was so small I had to be careful not to hit my elbows on the walls, and the heating was so unreliable that I often went to bed wearing layers. But that Monday morning, as I made instant coffee in a chipped mug and looked out my single window at the parking lot below, I felt something I had never felt before. Pure, undiluted determination. The rage from Thanksgiving had crystallized overnight into something more powerful and focused. I wasn't just angry anymore, I was strategic. I had taken the previous day to research, to plan, to figure out exactly how I was going to transform myself from family embarrassment to family envy. The internet had become my best friend and my library, offering unlimited access to information about successful people, their strategies, their mindsets, and their journeys. My first stop was Target, where I had been working part-time for 8 months in the electronics department. The pay was $12.50 an hour, which barely covered my rent, groceries, and gas. I had been grateful for the job when I got it, but now I saw it differently. It wasn't my destination, it was my launching pad. I arrived at work 30 minutes early, something I had never done before. My manager, Janet Rodriguez, a kind woman in her 50s who had always been fair to me, noticed immediately. "Sarah, you're here early. Everything okay?" "Janet, can I talk to you about something?" I asked, my new sense of purpose evident in my voice. We went to the small break room in the back of the store, a windowless space with fluorescent lighting and the constant hum of vending machines. Janet poured herself coffee from the pot that had probably been brewing since the previous evening, and sat across from me at the small table. "What's on your mind, honey?" "I want to know everything about retail management," I said. "I want to understand how this business works from the ground up. I want to learn about inventory management, customer service strategies, vendor relationships, profit margins, everything." Janet raised an eyebrow. "That's quite a change from the girl who's been doing the bare minimum for 8 months. What happened?" I considered how much to share. Let's just say I had a revelation about what I want my life to look like. Over the next hour, Janet outlined what it would take for me to move up within Target's corporate structure. She explained the different management levels, the training programs available, the skills I would need to develop. She also mentioned something that would prove crucial to my future success: Target's partnership with local community colleges to help employees earn business degrees while working. "Sarah, if you're serious about this, I can get you into the management trainee program. It means more hours, more responsibility, and initially only a small pay increase. But it's a real path upward." "I'm serious," I said, meaning it more than I had ever meant anything in my life. That afternoon, I went to Westchester Community College and had a meeting with my academic advisor, Dr. Patricia Chen, a sharp woman in her 40s who had always been supportive but realistic about my prospects. "Sarah, you're currently taking 12 credits per semester and maintaining a 3.2 GPA, she said, reviewing my file. "That's respectable, but if you want to accelerate your timeline, we need to talk about some changes." I explained my new goals and asked what it would take to complete my associate's degree in business in 1 year instead of 2. Dr. Chen looked at me with surprise, then pulled out a calculator and started running numbers. It would mean taking 18 credits per semester, plus summer courses. You'd need to maintain at least a 3.5 GPA to qualify for the honor societies and scholarship opportunities. It's doable, but it would mean no social life, no free time, and tremendous discipline. "I don't have a social life anyway," I replied. "And I've never been more disciplined about anything in my life." Dr. Chen spent the next 2 hours helping me map out an aggressive academic plan. She also mentioned something that would become another crucial element of my transformation: the college's business incubator program, which helped students develop real business plans and, in some cases, secure funding for startup ventures. "Sarah, I have to ask, what changed? 6 months ago, you were talking about maybe transferring to a 4-year school eventually. Now you're talking about compressed timelines and business ventures." I looked out her office window at the campus, Quad, where students were walking between classes, most of them probably taking their education for granted in ways I never could again. "Dr. Chen, I realize that I've been thinking too small. I've been accepting limitations that other people placed on me instead of deciding for myself what I'm capable of achieving." That evening, I sat in my tiny apartment with a yellow legal pad and started making lists. First, I wrote down every slight, every dismissal, every moment my family had made me feel inadequate. The list filled 2 pages, and reading it back made my determination burn even hotter. Then I started a second. List concrete, measurable goals. Not vague wishes like, be successful, but specific targets with deadlines. Complete associate's degree in business administration by December 2019, 12 months. Achieve promotion to assistant manager at Target by March 2019, 4 months. Develop and launch a side business by June 2019, 7 months. Save $10,000 by December 2019, 12 months. Apply to transfer to a 4-year university for fall. 2020 achieve local recognition for business success by Thanksgiving. 2020, looking at that list, I realized I was planning to completely transform my life in just 2 years. It seemed impossible, but I remembered something I had read earlier that day. The only impossible journey is the one you never begin. I also started a third list, one that I kept private and would never show anyone. The people who would witness my transformation. My mother, Linda, who had excluded me from the family photo. My father, Robert, who had stood by and let it happen. Emma, my golden sister, who had never stood up for me. My grandmother, Eleanor, who had never shown me warmth. Every relative who had looked at me with pity or dismissal. I wasn't planning revenge in any cruel or harmful way. I was planning something much more powerful. Success so undeniable that it would force them to confront their own poor judgment. The next few months became a blur of relentless activity. I was working 35 hours a week at Target while taking 18 credit hours at the community college. My typical day began at 5 a.m. with coffee and studying, followed by either classes or work from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., then the other commitment from 5 p.m. to 10 p.m., and finally more. Studying until midnight. I had no social life, no dating life, no entertainment budget. My meals consisted of peanut butter sandwiches, ramen noodles, and whatever I could get for free at school events. I bought my textbooks used and sold them back immediately after each semester. I cut my own hair and shopped exclusively at thrift stores, but the sacrifices were paying off. By February 2019, just 3 months after my Thanksgiving humiliation, several things had shifted dramatically. First, my grades had shot up to a 3.8 GPA, earning me a spot on the dean's list and qualifying me for several academic scholarships. That helped reduce my financial burden. Second, Janet had promoted me to senior sales associate with a raise to $15 an hour, and I was on track for the assistant manager program. Third, I had started my side business, a social media consulting service for small local businesses. It began when I helped the owner of a struggling restaurant near campus improve their Instagram presence, leading to a 40% increase in weekday lunch customers. Word spread quickly in the small business community. By March 2019, I was managing social media for 8 local businesses and earning an additional $800 per month. By May, it was 15 businesses and $1,500 per month. I was learning about digital marketing, customer psychology, brand development, and business strategy through real-world application. The physical transformation was just as dramatic as the professional one. The stress and activity had caused me to lose 25 pounds without trying. I started running in the mornings, not for weight loss, but for the mental clarity and energy it provided. I invested in a few well-fitted pieces of professional clothing from consignment shops, learned to do my makeup by watching YouTube tutorials, and got my hair professionally styled for the first time in years. But the most significant change was internal. The girl who had once tried to make herself invisible at family gatherings was becoming someone who commanded attention in business meetings and college presentations. I was developing confidence, assertiveness, and a presence that people noticed and remembered. In June 2019, something happened that would accelerate my trajectory beyond anything I had planned. Dr. Chen called me into her office with news that the college's business incubator program had selected my social media consulting business as one of 10 finalists for their annual entrepreneurship competition. "Sarah, this is a big deal," she explained. "The winner receives $25,000 in startup funding, mentorship from successful local business leaders, and a feature story in the Westchester Business Journal. The judging panel includes some of the most influential people in the county." I spent the next month preparing for the competition presentation, refining my business plan, developing financial projections, and practicing my pitch until I could deliver it flawlessly. The night before the competition, I recorded another voice memo to myself. June 30th, 2019. "Tomorrow I present my business plan to people who could change my life. 7 months ago, I wasn't good enough for a family photo. Tomorrow I have the chance to show the business community what I'm really capable of. Either way, I'm not the same person I was at Thanksgiving." The morning of the competition, I woke up feeling calm and prepared. I wore a navy blazer I had found at a consignment shop, paired with black slacks and the one pair of professional heels I owned. My presentation was polished. My financial projections were conservative but promising, and my confidence was genuine. There were 10 presenters, including MBA students from Columbia and NYU, who had access to resources I could never dream of. But when I stood in front of that panel of successful business leaders and spoke about my vision for helping small businesses thrive in the digital age, something magical happened. I wasn't Sarah Mitchell, the family disappointment. I was Sarah Mitchell, entrepreneur and business strategist. The questions came quickly and challenging, but I answered each one with confidence and specificity. When they asked about scalability, I outlined my plan for training and hiring additional consultants. When they asked about competition from larger agencies, I explained my competitive advantages in personalized service and local market knowledge. When they asked about my long-term vision, I described a future where small businesses across the region had access to professional quality digital marketing regardless of their budget. 2 hours later, the judges announced their decision. Third place went to a Columbia MBA student with a food delivery app. Second place went to an NYU student with a sustainable fashion concept. First place, and the $25,000 funding, went to me. Standing on that small stage in the college auditorium, holding the oversized check and listening to the applause, I felt a moment of pure triumph. But more than that, I felt a sense of inevitability, as if this was always supposed to happen. As if all those years of being underestimated had been preparation for this moment, when I would prove everyone wrong. In the audience, I saw Dr. Chen wiping away tears of pride. Janet from Target was there, beaming with satisfaction at having believed in me early. Several of my clients were present, nodding with approval at this validation of their decision to trust a 23-year-old with their business marketing. But the person I thought about most wasn't there. I imagined my mother, sitting in her perfect living room, surrounded by family photos that didn't include me, having no idea that her rejected daughter had just won the most prestigious business competition in the county. The local newspaper photographer captured the moment. Me holding the check, smiling genuinely for the first time in years, surrounded by people who had recognized my potential when my own family couldn't see it. That photo would run in the next day's Westchester Business Journal with the headline, "Local Entrepreneur Wins County Business Competition." It was the first time my face had appeared in print as someone to be celebrated rather than pitied. I was 23 years old, had been excluded from my family photo 8 months earlier, and was now being featured in the business section of the newspaper as an emerging entrepreneur to watch. The transformation was accelerating, and I was just getting started. The $25,000 from the business competition changed everything overnight. For the first time in my life, I had real capital to work with, and I was determined to use every dollar strategically. Within a week of winning, I had incorporated Mitchell Digital Strategy as an official LLC, opened a business bank account, and rented a small office space in a professional complex in White Plains. The office wasn't much, just 200 square feet with white walls, fluorescent lighting, and a view of the parking lot. But it was mine. I furnished it with a used desk from Craigslist, 2 client chairs from a store closing sale, and a whiteboard where I mapped out my growth strategy. Most importantly, I had it professionally painted and hung my business competition award on the wall, along with my business license and the framed newspaper article about my win. By August 2019, 9 months after the family photo incident, I was managing social media for 32 local businesses and had hired my first employee, Marcus Thompson, a recent college graduate with a degree in graphic design who was struggling to find work. Marcus was talented, hungry, and grateful for the opportunity. More importantly, he believed in my vision for the company. "Sarah, you've built something real here," he said during his first week. "Most people our age are still figuring out what they want to do with their lives, and you're already doing it." I had also made the decision to leave Target, despite Janet's disappointment. The retail experience had taught me valuable lessons about customer service, inventory management, and team leadership, but I had outgrown what the position could offer me. My last day was emotional. Janet had become more than a boss. She had been my first real mentor in the business world. "You know, Sarah, when you first came in here asking about management training, I thought you were just trying to impress me for a raise," she said as we hugged goodbye. "I had no idea you were actually planning to take over the world." By September, I had completed my associate's degree with a 3.9 GPA, graduating summa cum laude and delivering the student commencement address. Standing at that podium, looking out at an audience of families celebrating their graduates, I felt a pang of sadness that my own family wasn't there. But I also felt a surge of pride that I had achieved this milestone entirely through my own determination. The speech I gave that day was titled, "From Rejection to Direction," and while I didn't mention my family specifically, I spoke about using criticism and dismissal as motivation for growth. The audience responded with enthusiasm, and several people approached me afterward to say how inspired they were by my message. "You have a gift for public speaking," said Dr. Margaret Foster, the college president, as she shook my hand after the ceremony. "Have you considered applying to some of the more prestigious business programs? With your track record and this company you've built, I think you'd be a strong candidate for schools like NYU or even Columbia." That conversation planted a seed that would become my next major goal. If I was going to build a company that couldn't be ignored, I needed credentials that couldn't be dismissed. I spent that evening researching business programs at top universities, application requirements, and scholarship opportunities. Meanwhile, Mitchell Digital Strategy continued to grow rapidly. By October 2019, we were managing social media for 45 businesses across Westchester County. I had hired 2 more employees, Jennifer Kim, a marketing specialist with 5 years of agency experience, and David Rodriguez, a recent graduate who specialized in analytics and performance measurement. The quality of our work was attracting attention beyond just small local businesses. We started getting inquiries from mid-sized companies, restaurants with multiple locations, and even a few tech startups. Each client was a step up in terms of complexity, budget, and prestige. One of our breakthrough moments came in November when we landed Martinez & Associates, a mid-sized law firm with offices in White Plains and Manhattan. The partners had been unimpressed with their previous agency's work and were looking for fresh thinking. Our proposal focused on thought leadership content that would position their attorneys as experts in their fields, combined with targeted social media advertising to reach potential clients. Within 3 months, their website traffic had increased by 180%, their social media engagement was up 300%, and they had acquired 12 new clients directly attributable to our campaigns. The senior partner, Elena Martinez, was so impressed that she started referring other professional service firms to us. "Sarah, what you've accomplished is remarkable," she told me during one of our quarterly review meetings. When we first met, I'll be honest, I was skeptical about hiring such a young company, but you've exceeded every expectation and delivered results that our previous agency never achieved. That endorsement opened doors to other law firms, accounting practices, and consulting companies. By December 2019, exactly 1 year after the family photo incident, Mitchell Digital Strategy had 58 clients, 8 employees, and was generating $35,000 per month in revenue. But more significantly, my personal transformation was becoming impossible to ignore. The combination of business success, weight loss, improved confidence, and professional styling had created a version of myself that I barely recognized from the girl who had been excluded from the family photo. I had moved from my tiny studio apartment to a 1-bedroom place in a nicer neighborhood. It wasn't luxurious, but it had big windows, updated appliances, and enough space for a proper home office. I had invested in a professional wardrobe, learned to carry myself with confidence, and developed the kind of presence that made people take notice when I entered a room. The local business community had started to recognize me as a rising star. I was invited to speak at Chamber of Commerce events, participate in business panels, and serve on the planning committee for the county's annual Small Business Awards. Each appearance raised my profile and attracted new clients. In January 2020, something happened that would accelerate my visibility beyond anything I could have planned. The Westchester Business Journal decided to do a feature story on young entrepreneurs in the county, and I was selected as their cover story for the February issue. The photo shoot took place in my office, with professional lighting and a photographer who knew how to capture confidence and success. I wore a charcoal gray blazer with a crisp white shirt, my hair styled professionally, and minimal but polished makeup. When the photographer showed me the test shots on his camera, I was startled by what I saw. The person in those photos wasn't the invisible girl from the family gathering. She was poised, professional, and powerful. She looked like someone who belonged in boardrooms and on magazine covers. The article itself was 3 pages long, with the headline, Digital Dynasty: How Sarah Mitchell Built a Marketing Empire Before Age 25. It detailed my journey from target employee to successful entrepreneur, the growth of Mitchell digital strategy, and my plans for expansion. The writer, Jennifer Walsh, had done her research and painted a picture of someone who had achieved remarkable success through determination and strategic thinking. Mitchell's story is particularly inspiring because it demonstrates that traditional credentials aren't always necessary for business success, the article read. While many entrepreneurs come from privileged backgrounds or elite educational institutions, Mitchell built her company while working retail and attending community college. Her success is a testament to the power of hard work, strategic thinking, and unwavering determination. The magazine hit newsstands on February 15, 2020. Within hours, my phone was ringing with interview requests from other publications, speaking invitations, and potential clients who had seen the article. The office receptionist I had hired the previous month was struggling to keep up with the volume of calls. But the call that mattered most came that evening from my sister Emma. Sarah? Her voice was tentative, uncertain. I saw the magazine article. The one with you on the cover? Oh. Hi, Emma. I tried to keep my voice neutral, professional. It had been over a year since we had spoken directly. I had no idea you were doing so well. Mom and Dad don't really talk about what you're up to, and I've been so busy with school and work that I haven't kept up. But this article? Sarah, you started your own company? You're on the cover of a business magazine? Yes, I did. I have. There was a long pause. Sarah, I need to tell you something. What happened at Thanksgiving last year with the family photo? I should have said something. I should have defended you. I've regretted it every day since. Her words hit me harder than I expected. I had spent so much energy being angry at my parents that I hadn't fully processed how much Emma's silence had hurt me too. Emma, No, let me finish. I was 19 and scared of making waves, but that's not an excuse. You're my sister, and I failed you when you needed someone to stand up for you. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I sat in my home office, looking at the framed magazine cover on my desk, and felt a complex mix of emotions. Part of me wanted to hang up, to maintain the wall I had built around my heart. But another part of me, the part that remembered the little girl who had once looked up to her big sister, felt a crack in that wall. I appreciate you saying that, Emma. It means more than you know. Sarah, would you be willing to meet for coffee sometime? I'd like to hear about your business, and I'd like to try to rebuild our relationship if you're open to it. I agreed to meet her the following weekend, though I wasn't sure what to expect from the conversation. That meeting at a small cafe in Scarsdale turned out to be a turning point in more ways than one. Emma arrived looking nervous but determined, wearing jeans and a sweater that made her look younger than her 21 years. She had always been beautiful, but there was something different about her now. Less polished perfection, more genuine vulnerability. Sarah, you look incredible, she said as she sat down across from me. I mean, you always looked fine before, but now you look powerful, confident, like you own the world. We talked for 3 hours. Emma told me about her struggles at Columbia, how the pressure to maintain her perfect image was exhausting her, how she had realized that much of her success had been handed to her rather than earned. I told her about the journey from Target to my own company, the long nights of studying and working, the satisfaction of building something from nothing. I always envied you, you know, she said at one point, which shocked me completely. You envied me? Emma, you were the golden child. Everything came easily to you. That's exactly why I envied you. Everything was given to me, but you fought for everything you got. You had to develop real strength, real resilience. I was so protected and pampered that I never learned how to handle real challenges. When things get difficult at school or in relationships, I fall apart because I don't know how to struggle. It was a perspective I had never considered, and it helped me understand that the family dynamics that had hurt me had also limited Emma in their own way. Emma, you're only 21. You have time to develop those skills, to build your own path. That's actually part of why I wanted to talk to you. I'm thinking about transferring schools, maybe starting over somewhere that doesn't know me as the daughter of Robert and Linda Mitchell. I want to earn my success instead of inheriting it. Our conversation that day didn't erase years of hurt, but it opened a door to the possibility of a real relationship between us. More importantly, it showed me that my transformation was visible even to people who had known me at my lowest point. The magazine cover had more impact than I could have anticipated. Within 2 months, Mitchell Digital Strategy had grown to 75 clients and 12 employees. We had moved to a larger office space with conference rooms, individual offices, and a modern design that reflected our growing success. I was also accepted to NYU's Stern School of Business for their accelerated MBA program, with a partial scholarship based on my entrepreneurial achievements. The program was designed for working professionals and would allow me to continue running my company while earning my graduate degree. By summer 2020, despite the challenges of the pandemic, my business had adapted quickly to the increased demand for digital marketing. Many traditional businesses suddenly needed online presence and e-commerce capabilities, and we were perfectly positioned to help them navigate this transition. The growth was so rapid that I hired a business manager, Patricia Gonzalez, a former marketing executive with 15 years of corporate experience, who brought professional systems and processes to our expanding operation. She helped me implement proper accounting systems, HR policies, and strategic planning processes that would support continued growth. "Sarah, what you've built in less than 2 years is remarkable," Patricia told me during one of our weekly strategy meetings. Most companies take 5 to 10 years to reach this level of revenue and market position. You've compressed that timeline through sheer determination and smart positioning. By the fall of 2020, we were managing marketing for over 100 businesses, from small local shops to mid-sized regional companies. Our team had grown to 18 people, and we had established ourselves as the premier digital marketing agency in Westchester County. But the achievement I was most proud of came in October when I was invited to speak at the Hudson Valley Business Summit, the region's most prestigious business conference. The event attracted CEOs, entrepreneurs, and business leaders from across New York State, and my presentation was titled, "From Zero to Seven Figures: Building a Marketing Empire in the Digital Age." Standing on that stage, looking out at an audience of successful business leaders who had come to hear what I had to say, I felt the full weight of how far I had traveled. 2 years earlier, I had been deemed unworthy of a family photograph. Now I was being recognized as an expert whose insights were valuable to people with decades more experience than me. The presentation went perfectly. I spoke about the importance of authentic customer relationships, the power of data-driven decision-making, and the necessity of adapting quickly to changing market conditions. The audience was engaged, asking thoughtful questions and taking notes throughout my 45-minute presentation. After the talk, I was approached by several potential clients, speaking opportunities, and even a few investors interested in discussing expansion funding. But the conversation that mattered most came from an unexpected source. "Excuse me, are you Sarah Mitchell?" I turned to see a well-dressed woman in her 50s, with perfectly styled gray hair and an expensive handbag. She looked familiar, but I couldn't quite place her. "Yes, I am. I'm Margaret Thornfield. I serve on the board of several nonprofits in Westchester County, and I also happen to be a neighbor of your parents in their country club community." My heart stopped. This woman knew my family. "I have to tell you, your presentation today was absolutely brilliant. The insights you shared about customer psychology and digital engagement were sophisticated and practical. I had no idea that Robert and Linda's daughter had become such a successful entrepreneur." "Thank you," I managed to say, wondering where this conversation was heading. "I'm curious, do your parents attend your speaking engagements? They must be incredibly proud of what you've accomplished." The question hung in the air like a challenge. I could have lied, could have said they were supportive, could have maintained the illusion of family harmony. Instead, I chose honesty. "Actually, Mrs. Thornfield, my parents and I aren't particularly close. They weren't very supportive of my business ambitions early on, and we've grown apart over the years." Her expression shifted to one of surprise and then something that looked like understanding. "I see. Well, that's their loss, isn't it? What you've built is extraordinary, and any parent should be proud to claim you as their daughter." She handed me her business card and walked away, leaving me with the distinct impression that this conversation would somehow make its way back to my parents. That evening, I received a text message from Emma. "Dad just got a call from someone who saw you speak at a business conference today. Mom is Googling your company right now. I think they're starting to realize what they've been missing." I smiled as I read the message. The plan was working exactly as I had hoped. My success was becoming too visible, too significant for my family to ignore or dismiss. 3 days later, my phone rang with a number I recognized but hadn't seen. In over a year, my mother. "Sarah, it's Mom." "Hi, Mom." I kept my voice neutral, professional. We heard that you spoke at some business conference this week. Margaret Thornfield called your father to tell him about it." "Yes, I did. It went well." "Sarah, I had no idea you had started your own company. When did this happen? How did this happen?" The questions came quickly, with an undertone of confusion, and what might have been regret. I explained the timeline briefly: the business competition, the magazine cover, the growth of the company, my acceptance to graduate school. "You're getting an MBA? From NYU?" My mother's voice rose with surprise. "Yes, I start classes next month." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "Sarah, your father and I would like to take you to dinner, to catch up, to hear about what you've been doing." The invitation felt surreal. 2 years after being excluded from the family photo, I was being invited to dinner so they could learn about my accomplishments. Part of me wanted to refuse, to make them feel the rejection I had experienced, but I realized that accepting would be more powerful than declining. "Sure, Mom. I'd like that." We arranged to meet at Le Bernardin in Manhattan the following Friday, an expensive restaurant that signaled they were taking this dinner seriously. I spent the week preparing for the conversation, not sure what to expect but determined to represent myself and my achievements with confidence. The dinner was everything I had imagined and more. My parents arrived dressed formally, looking nervous and uncertain in a way I had never seen before. My father wore his best suit, and my mother had clearly been to the salon that day. They looked like they were preparing for an important business meeting rather than dinner with their daughter. "Sarah, you look wonderful," my mother said as we were seated at a corner table with white tablecloths and crystal glasses. "Very professional. Very successful." The conversation was awkward at first, with my parents asking careful questions about my business and me providing polite but detailed answers. I could see them processing the reality of what I had built, trying to reconcile the daughter they had dismissed with the entrepreneur sitting across from them. "So you have 18 employees?" my father asked, his investment banker mind clearly calculating what that meant in terms of revenue and success. "Yes, we'll probably hire 5 more before the end of the year." "And you won a business competition? With a $25,000 prize?" "Yes. It was the county-wide entrepreneurship competition. I was the youngest winner in the program's history." My mother sat quietly through most of the meal, occasionally asking questions but mainly listening with an expression that shifted between pride and regret. Finally, as we were finishing dessert, she spoke the words I had been waiting to hear for 2 years. "Sarah, I owe you an apology. A very big apology." The restaurant noise seemed to fade away as she continued. "What I said to you at Thanksgiving 2 years ago, asking you to step out of the family photo. It was cruel and wrong. I was focused on maintaining an image of perfection, and I lost sight of what really mattered. You're my daughter, and you should have been in that photo regardless of anything else." My father nodded in agreement. "We both failed you, Sarah. We were so focused on conventional success markers that we couldn't see the potential you had. What you've accomplished is remarkable, and we should have been supporting you from the beginning." "The truth is," my mother continued, "when Margaret Thornfield called us about your speaking engagement, I realized that other people see something in you that we were blind to. You've become exactly the kind of person we should be proud to have in our family photos." Felt a complex mix of vindication and sadness. It was gratifying to hear them acknowledge their mistakes, but it was also painful to realize that their recognition of my worth had only come after other people validated my success. "I appreciate you saying that," I replied carefully. "It means something to hear you acknowledge what happened." "We'd like to make things right," my father said. "We know we can't undo the past, but we'd like to be part of your future if you'll let us." The dinner ended with tentative plans to have regular family meals and their promise to attend my MBA graduation ceremony. It wasn't a complete reconciliation, but it was a beginning. As I drove home that night, I reflected on how much had changed since that November day when I had been excluded from the family photo. The girl who wasn't good enough to represent the family had become someone they now wanted to claim as their own. But I also realized that their validation, while satisfying, wasn't what had driven my success. I had built my company and transformed my life for myself, not for them. Their recognition was just a pleasant side effect of achievements that had meaning and value regardless of their approval. The real victory wasn't that they now wanted to include me. The real victory was that I no longer needed them to. The final transformation came in the most public way possible, and it happened faster than even I had anticipated. By the spring of 2021, Mitchell Digital Strategy had evolved from a local marketing agency into a regional powerhouse with clients across 3 states. Our success had attracted the attention of a major media company based in Manhattan, MediaVantage Holdings, which was looking to acquire innovative digital marketing firms. The acquisition discussions began in March 2021, just as I was entering my final semester of the MBA program at NYU. The process was intense and demanding, requiring detailed financial audits, strategic presentations, and negotiations that tested every business skill I had developed over the previous 2.5 years. Patricia Gonzalez, my business manager, had become invaluable during this period. Her corporate experience helped me navigate the complex legal and financial aspects of a potential acquisition, while her strategic insights ensured we maintained our growth trajectory throughout the negotiation process. "Sarah, I need you to understand what's happening here," she told me during one of our preparation sessions. "MediaVantage isn't just buying a marketing agency. They're buying you, your vision, your leadership, your track record of success. This is about recognizing you as one of the emerging leaders in digital marketing." The final presentation to MediaVantage's board of directors was scheduled for May 15, 2021, in their Manhattan headquarters. I spent weeks preparing a comprehensive overview of our company's growth, our strategic vision, and our plans for expansion under their umbrella. The presentation was scheduled to last 90 minutes, with a detailed Q&A session to follow. The night before the presentation, I stood in my apartment bathroom, looking at myself in the mirror as I prepared for what could be the most important day of my professional life. The reflection looking back at me bore no resemblance to the girl who had been excluded from the family photo 2.5 years earlier. I had lost 40 pounds through a combination of stress, exercise, and better nutrition. My hair was professionally styled in a sleek bob that framed my face confidently. I had learned to apply makeup with precision, highlighting my best features, without overdoing it. Most importantly, my posture and bearing had changed completely. I stood tall, made direct eye contact, and carried myself like someone who belonged in boardrooms and executive suites. But the most significant change was internal. The insecurity and self-doubt that had once defined me had been replaced by genuine confidence earned through measurable achievements. I no longer questioned whether I deserved to be in important rooms. I knew I had earned my place through hard work and smart decisions. The MediaVantage presentation went flawlessly. I stood in their glass-walled conference room on the 34th floor, looking out at Manhattan while presenting to 12 executives who controlled a media empire worth hundreds of millions of dollars. My slides were crisp and professional. My delivery was confident and engaging, and my answers to their challenging questions demonstrated both strategic thinking and practical experience. "Ms. Mitchell," said James Harrison, MediaVantage's CEO, at the conclusion of my presentation, "in 25 years of acquiring companies, I rarely see someone your age who combines entrepreneurial vision with operational excellence the way you do. What you've built is impressive not just for its financial performance, but for its strategic sophistication." The acquisition was finalized 3 weeks later for $4.2 million, with additional performance bonuses that could bring the total to $6 million over the following 2 years. At 25 years old, I had gone from working at Target for $12.50 an hour to selling my company for millions of dollars. But the financial success, while satisfying, wasn't the most meaningful part of the transaction. As part of the deal, I would become MediaVantage's youngest ever vice president, heading their new digital innovation division and overseeing marketing strategy for their entire portfolio of companies. The announcement of the acquisition made headlines in multiple business publications. The Westchester Business Journal ran a front-page story with the headline, "Local Entrepreneur Sells Company for Millions." The Hudson Valley Business Times featured me on their cover with the tagline, "From Retail Worker to Media Executive, the Sarah Mitchell Success Story." But the article that had the most impact appeared in Forbes' 30 Under 30 issue, where I was featured as one of the top young entrepreneurs in marketing and advertising. The photo shoot took place in Media Vantage's Manhattan offices, with me posed confidently in front of floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline. The Forbes article was comprehensive, detailing my journey from community college student to successful entrepreneur, but it also touched on themes of family rejection and personal transformation that resonated with readers far beyond the business community. Mitchell's story challenges conventional wisdom about entrepreneurial success, the article noted. While many successful entrepreneurs come from supportive families and privileged backgrounds, Mitchell built her empire after being explicitly told she didn't fit her family's image of success. Her achievement demonstrates that rejection and criticism can become powerful motivators for those determined to prove their critics wrong. The article went viral on social media, shared thousands of times by people who saw their own struggles reflected in my story. I received hundreds of messages from young women who had been underestimated by their families, from first-generation college students building their own paths, and from entrepreneurs who had used rejection as fuel for their own success. But the response that mattered most came from my hometown. The mayor of Mount Vernon, where I had lived in that tiny studio apartment just 3 years earlier, called to invite me to be the keynote speaker at the city's annual Economic Development Summit. The event would be held at the Westchester County Center with an expected attendance of over 2,500 business leaders, elected officials, and community members. Ms. Mitchell, your story embodies the American dream of building success through determination and hard work, Mayor Patricia Williams told me during our phone conversation. We'd be honored to have you inspire our community with your message of transformation and achievement. I accepted the invitation immediately, recognizing it as an opportunity to complete the circle of my transformation in the most public way possible. The weeks leading up to the summit were a whirlwind of media appearances and speaking engagements. I was invited to discuss entrepreneurship on local television morning shows, participated in panels at business conferences, and was featured in magazine articles about women in leadership. Each appearance increased my visibility and reinforced my reputation as a successful young executive worth watching. But more importantly, each interview allowed me to share my message about the power of using rejection as motivation for achievement. The moment my family excluded me from their photo was actually a gift, I told one interviewer. It forced me to stop seeking their validation and start building my own path. Sometimes the people who reject us are doing us a favor by pushing us toward our real potential. 2 weeks before the summit, something happened that brought my transformation full circle in the most satisfying way possible. I received a phone call from my mother, but this time her tone was completely different from our previous conversations. "Sarah, I saw the Forbes article. I saw the photo of you in that beautiful office. I read about your company and the acquisition and everything you've accomplished. Yes, it's been an exciting few months. Sarah, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest with me." Her voice was shaky, uncertain in a way I had never heard before. "Do you think you could ever forgive us? Not just for the photo incident, but for all the years we didn't see who you really were?" The question caught me off guard. I had spent so much energy building my success that I hadn't fully processed my feelings about forgiveness. "Mom, I'm not angry anymore. I'm grateful. What happened made me who I am today." "But are we too late? Have we lost you permanently?" I thought carefully before answering. "You didn't lose me, Mom. You just never really knew me. But if you want to know who I am now, I'm open to that. Your father and I would like to attend your speech at the summit, if that's okay with you." "Of course it's okay. I'd like that." The night before the summit, I sat in my Manhattan apartment, a spacious one-bedroom with hardwood floors and a view of Central Park that I had purchased with my first bonus check from Media Vantage, preparing my keynote address. The speech was titled, "From Invisible to Inevitable, Transforming Rejection into Success." I had decided to tell my story completely and honestly, including the family photo incident that had started my transformation. It would be the first time I had shared those details publicly, but I felt it was important for people to understand that extraordinary success often begins with ordinary pain. The day of the summit arrived gray and drizzly, but the Westchester County Center was packed with attendees. As I waited backstage, I could hear the buzz of conversation from over 1,500 people who had come to hear various speakers discuss economic development and business innovation. Patricia Gonzalez, who had become not just my business manager but my closest advisor and friend, found me in the green tent area behind the stage. "Sarah, you've got this. This is your moment to show everyone how far you've come." I peeked through the curtain and saw the audience. Business leaders in expensive suits, elected officials, Chamber of Commerce members, students from local colleges, and community members who wanted to hear success stories. In the front row, I spotted my parents sitting with Emma, all three of them looking nervous but proud. "Ladies and gentlemen," announced the summit moderator, "please welcome our keynote speaker, Sarah Mitchell, Vice President of Digital Innovation at MediaVantage Holdings and founder of Mitchell Digital Strategy." The applause was thunderous as I walked onto the stage. The lights were bright and warm, and I could feel the energy of the audience as they settled in to hear what I had to say. I stood at the podium for a moment, looking out at all those faces, and felt a deep sense of completion. 3 years ago, I began, my voice clear and confident. I was working at Target for $12.50 an hour, struggling to pay for community college classes, and living in a studio apartment that was barely bigger than this stage. Most people in my life, including my own family, saw me as someone with limited potential and modest prospects. I could see people leaning forward, immediately engaged by the contrast between that description and the successful executive standing before them. But on November 22, 2018, something happened that changed the trajectory of my entire life. My mother asked me to step out of our family photograph because she didn't think I represented the image they wanted to project. A murmur went through the audience. I could see my mother in the front row, her face flushed with embarrassment, but her eyes filled with what looked like pride. That moment of rejection could have destroyed me. Instead, it liberated me. It freed me from the need for their approval and forced me to build my own definition of success. I spent the next 45 minutes walking the audience through my transformation. The late nights studying and working, the business competition victory, the magazine covers, the company growth, and finally the acquisition by MediaVantage. But more than just recounting achievements, I spoke about the mindset shifts that had made everything possible. Success isn't about proving other people wrong, I explained. It's about proving yourself right. It's about believing in your own potential even when no one else can see it. It's about using rejection as information rather than validation. The audience was completely engaged, laughing at my stories about learning business skills on YouTube and nodding in recognition when I described the fear of taking risks without a safety net. Today, my face is on magazine covers, my company has been acquired for millions of dollars, and I hold an executive position at one of the country's leading media companies. But none of that would have happened if I had stayed in that family photo, comfortable and unchallenged. I concluded with a message that I hoped would resonate beyond the business community. If someone in your life has told you that you're not good enough, smart enough, or capable enough to achieve your dreams, I want you to know that they're not describing your limitations. They're describing theirs. Your potential is not determined by other people's vision. It's determined by your willingness to work for what you want and your refusal to accept other people's limitations as your own. The standing ovation lasted for nearly 5 minutes. People were on their feet, applauding not just for my achievements, but for the message of transformation and possibility that transcended any individual success story. As I left the stage, I was approached by dozens of people wanting to share their own stories of overcoming rejection and building success. Young entrepreneurs asked for advice about starting businesses. Students wanted to know about scholarship opportunities and career strategies. Parents apologized for not believing in their children's unconventional dreams, but the conversation that meant the most happened in the lobby after the event had concluded. My mother, father, and Emma approached me together, all three of them, looking emotional and proud. "Sarah," my mother said, tears streaming down her face. "That was the most powerful speech I've ever heard. And I am so sorry that it took me this long to really see who you are." My father, who had always been more reserved with emotions, spoke next. "Sweetheart, what you've accomplished is extraordinary. But more than that, the person you've become is someone I'm honored to call my daughter. Emma,